Are we set?
Yes, we are. Board members, Upgarian. Barry. Here. Culpepper. Ochoa.
Here.
Robertson.
Here.
Steger.
Here.
Chair Raggio.
Here.
The agenda for the January 18, 2017 special meeting of Glendale Oversight Board was posted on Thursday, January 12, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Next item, please.
2, approval of minutes. A, minutes of special oversight board meeting of Wednesday, July 23, 2014, January 27, 2016, May 4th, 2016, August 3rd, 2016, and December 7th, 2016.
These are board meeting minutes that we've had who are now, and it's lucky because it goes back as far as 16 and 14 and that. And those of you that were not here or in one way are going to be asked to approve the minutes. And so should we go through the minutes one by one? And
I think if we just could get a yay for people who weren't at the meetings and listen to the audio, I think that would be good enough, yeah? Yes. Okay. Just from me, I listened to the audio of May 4, 2016 when I wasn't here, so if we get one more person who either claims or says that they listened to it, then I think we're good. Yes.
Oh, I did. I listened to those
Okay.
minutes. Yes.
We're good.
all right, May 4?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Could we take them collectively if we were all then there?
We can, yes, we can.
Is it okay, Mr. Chairman, if we take them all collectively and just get them approved?
Yeah. Well, the same thing is true of those who were not here for the 27th of January 2016.
Right. Mine is anyone who wasn't even here, which is Dr. Robinson, maybe. He wasn't even here, so he'll abstain, I guess.
How
Mr.
about
Chair and
August?
members of the Oversight Board, what we had recommended, these meetings are relatively short, is to go ahead, for those that weren't present at those meetings, in order to approve those minutes, is to ask the members if they would kindly just listen to the audio of those minutes, and then when we convene to confirm whether those have been reviewed, and that way we can take them collectively and approve them. Because we have had some turnover of members, and in order to do that effectively and confirm that on the record that you've reviewed the minutes, then we can approve them. So I think that's what we were suggesting last time that we were together.
And I think that's what the agreement was that we did.
I certainly would stipulate to that.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's just take them collectively and get them approved.
Once everyone can confirm that they've actually listened to the minutes. So perhaps
Or
we could.
those who are absent from the minutes, have they listened to the minutes?
I either have listened to the minutes or I was here at that time, so either one.
Everything, I would say the same except for the 7th of December.
Right, and I'm the same.
7th?
I was here on the 7th.
Oh, okay.
I was either at the meeting or listening to the minutes.
So can we take those matters now if we have a
Yes, you
quorum
could.
of
You
those
have a
members?
quorum in order to approve. And if you did not listen to them, then you can abstain.
Okay.
I think Mr. Steiger moved, I seconded to approve all of them at the same time.
Call the roll, please.
Board member Upgarian.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Culpepper. Ochoa.
with abstention on the 7th.
Robertson.
Abstain.
Steger.
Yes.
Chair Raggio.
Yes.
Three would be,
Pardon?
actually three, informational items, introduction with board members, introduction to new board members.
And would the new board member introduce himself?
Happy to. My name is Winfred Roberson, and I work for the Glendale Unified School District. What else would you like to know?
And you were the last man in the room, is that it?
You know, that's funny, no. No, what, anything else? Nothing for the record, right? Just name and title?
Serial number.
And serial number, right?
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Pleasure to have you.
All right, glad to be a part.
Pleasure having you in Glendale.
Next
Four.
item.
4, action items for a Director of Community Development regarding recognized obligation payment schedule for July 2017 through June 2018, ROPS 1718. 4A1, Oversight Board Resolution to adopt a recognized obligation payment schedule for July 2017 through June 2018, ROPS 1718, including administrative budget for the same period.
Good afternoon, Oversight Board Chair and members. So the agency's ROPS, or the annual budget, covers the period of July 2017 through June 2018. The total budget request is for $38 million, which will be funded by $17 million in existing cash reserves and $22 million of new property tax increment, which is referred to as RPTTF. The funding items on the ROPS are consistent with prior ROPSs, and the majority being for bond debt service and proceeds, and the rest being for the few remaining agreements, contracts, and administrative costs that the agency has left. The agency has retired a few line items on this ROPS, so we're now down to 38 lines compared to 143 lines in the past. There are 2 items of note on this ROPS. The first is a $10 million request to use the 2011 bond proceeds, which is part of the agency's cash on hand. This is the first time the agency is requesting to use these funds, as they were previously frozen per the Dissolution Act. The recent Dissolution Act amendment, known as SB 107, which was passed in September of 2015, finally granted authority for the agency to use those funds. The funding request amount on the ROPS is based upon the formula outlined in SB 107. And per SB 107, the agency may request an additional amount once the agency gets its last and final ROPS approved. The other big item on the ROPS is the annual city agency loan payment, which this year is $4.9 million. The amount is determined also by a formula specified in the Dissolution Act, and the annual payments are expected to occur until about 2021. That concludes my summary of the ROPS. Upon Oversight Board approval, we would submit the ROPS to the State Department of Finance by February 1st in order to avoid daily penalties of $10,000. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Board Member Upgarian,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Culpepper, Ochoa,
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Steger,
Yes.
Chair Raggio.
Yes. Next item.
4B, Director of Community Development regarding bond expenditure agreement between Glendale Successor Agency, Glendale Housing Authority, and the City of Glendale. 4B1, Oversight Board Resolution approving a bond expenditure agreement for expenditure of excess 2011 bond proceeds between Glendale Successor Agency, Glendale Housing Authority, and City of Glendale.
Oversight Board Chair and members, in 2011, the agency issued $50 million in taxable bonds to fund redevelopment and affordable housing activities in the Central Redevelopment Project area. The 2012 Dissolution Act, as I mentioned, froze the use of those bond proceeds, but the law was amended to allow the agency to immediately use 100% of its housing bond proceeds and 5% of its non-housing bond proceeds for a total of $10 million. Once the agency gets its last and final ROPS approved, it can request an additional 25% of non-housing proceeds, which would be an additional $10 million. The agency has listed that $10 million on the ROPS, and this agenda item is to approve a bond expenditure agreement with the agency, the City of Glendale, and the Glendale Housing Authority. The purpose of the bond expenditure agreement is to allow the agency to transfer the approved amount of bond proceeds to the city and the Housing Authority as a one-time expense on the ROPS. This would be, and when they receive those funds, they would spend the funds in accordance with the bond covenant. This would be different than listing the funds on the ROPS to be administered from period to period. If we continue to track these funds on the ROPS, it can be prohibitive to project management because the ROPS is looking out 9 months into the future for budgeting purposes. and there's very little ability to amend the ROPS once it's been approved. Tracking the funds on the ROPS would also require more agency staff time, and it could delay the agency's ability to submit a last and final ROPS. And keeping it on the ROPS also does not provide any added insurance that the money will be spent per the bond covenant, because it already will under the rules of the bond covenant. So the bond expenditure agreement requires the bond proceeds to be spent in accordance with the Dissolution Act and the covenant, and it assists in more effective and efficient administration of those funds. Therefore, we recommend approval of the bond expenditure agreement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm just not really sure. If you can just give us a little bit more as to, now, we just approved $10 million to be put on ROPS, right? From the actual bonds. What is the bond expenditure agreement does over and above that?
It doesn't do anything over and above that. All it does is it specifies how we give the money to the city and the housing authority to use per the covenant. So the ROPS authorizes us to use the 10 million, and this says when we use that 10 million, we're just going to expense it on the ROPS as a one-time expense. We're just going to give it to them once, the whole amount. And they spend those down on projects in compliance with the bond covenant. If we didn't have this agreement in place,
Yeah, that's what I want to know. If you don't have the agreement in place, what happens?
then they would use the exact same amount of money. It would just be listed on the ROPS, and every ROPS period, we would need to report how much of the money was spent and how much wasn't spent. And any amount that wasn't spent, we would need to rebudget it on the next ROPS, and then track it again, and then rebudget it on the next ROPS and track it again. They would use the exact same money. It would just be carried out from ROPS to ROPS.
So you just have to, instead of actually making a one-time payment of $10 million, you have to continuously put in to the future ROPS anything that's unused as a balance, and then report back again, and then submit that to the Department of Finance every time.
Exactly.
With the one wrinkle that you're moving over the 8.4 million for housing, about $2 million right now on this ROPS, possibly another $10 million at the last and final, and the remaining $27 million basically remains stranded in the Treasury where it sits today. That can't be used for, at this point, anything other than debt service on those very bonds.
And then those 27 millions for it to be used, does it have to come back here again with this agreement, or?
No, pursuant to this
not?
agreement, it stays there in the Treasury and would expire unto itself. So it doesn't, the idea, I think the state of the Department of Finance is getting, is trying to close out all of its accounts and try to wind down, accelerate the wind down of redevelopment, saying, okay, you can only use these bond proceeds for these stated things. One of those stated things in the post-redevelopment environment is debt service. So it's kind of a tragedy that you'll have $27 million that would be sitting there in the Treasury that can't be used for anything other than debt service payments. But the silver lining to that is debt service payments that are made ultimately benefit the schools, the college, the county, and to some degree the city as well. It just is an accelerant to getting the cities out of the redevelopment business.
I got it.
And the 27 million is not part of this bond
I
expenditure
understand
agreement.
that, I understand.
Okay.
Just to tag on to that, if you were going to want to either use it for debt service or the legislature changed the rules and say you could use it for something else, we would have to list that $27 million on a subsequent ROPS, but then it would be covered by this agreement. We could transfer it to the city, one-time expense, and then the city could do a project according to the covenant.
I'm just saying that that $27 million, if it becomes available and say, okay, now you can use it all, does it come back to this body?
It would have.
Sign this agreement?
It would have to, because you first have to list it on a ROPS.
Right.
The Department of Finance has to approve the expenditure. In this case, it would be the expenditure giving the money to the city
Whatever it
or
is.
the housing authority.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to add, maybe this, I'm not sure this is where you're headed. This also helps the Department of Finance because they know that these bonds are being spent according to the bond covenants, and no entity, no public entity is going to go outside the bounds and jeopardize their bonds by using them in some other fashion. So they feel pretty comfortable that the cities will use that according to the bond. They don't want the headache of having to take them in, approve them, track them, and have that go back and forth.
And I wasn't going there, but I just wanted to get some clarification. I think it was clarified already.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Call the,
Board Member Abkarian,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Culpepper, Ochoa,
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Steger,
Yes.
Chair Raggio.
yes. Any other items?
6 would be oral communications. Discussion is limited to items within the jurisdiction of the Oversight Board. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Oversight Board may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director of the Successor Agency for investigation and report.
You have no cards, do you?
I do not have cards.
So is there anything else?
I did want to provide one update, which is that the State Department of Finance did approve the Hilton buyout offer. So the $3.7 million, they'll be, once we execute the purchase and sale agreement, we will receive the $3.7 million. And then because we have that as cash on hand on our next ROPS, we will use it to fund obligations on the ROPS, and therefore $3.7 million in RPTTF won't be used, and it'll be distributed to the taxing entities.
Could you have a separate report on that as to how much each taxing entity will get as a separate report from
Sure.
that 3.7
Sure.
million?
In the original staff report, I had it broken down, and I can get that.
You assume that I can actually go back, my brain will go back that far, so if you can just get another report, I would appreciate it.
Put it this
Sure.
way, Winfred's gonna be buying lunch.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Just finished lunch.
For 3.7 million, I'll buy lunch.
Would you like me
You're on.
Would you like me to email it to you or provide it at the next meeting?
I think just provide it in the next meeting to everyone,
Okay.
so it's not a communication outside.
Will do.
Thank you.
Anything else that we should be? And welcome again.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're going to find that this happens to be one of the longer meetings.
Well, you know what? I came from Orange County, rushing to get here, realizing that I got here late last time and the meeting was over, so.
10 to 15 minutes in advance.
So,
Due to the
Without
great
further
job of
ado-
the staff, that's why we don't have too much to do. Give us such a good report.
we have no need for a closed session. Okay. And we have no new business, so with that, meeting is adjourned.